rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Well, if you got $100 million and you're doing 10 episodes, that's $10 million per episode. I could live with that. I think that's fair. Well, some people saying that that's not enough for a Star Wars live-action TV series. Jon Favreau seems content with it. As far as we know, that's what we're hearing. $100 million budget for the as-yet untitled Star Wars TV series being helmed by Jon Favreau for the forthcoming Disney streaming service. That's what's making the headlines this week here on Rebel Force Radio. This week's show, Friday, August 10th, 2018. We're already to August. My birthday just a scant 2.5 weeks away.
Oh, the countdown's on.
Yeah,
most people are counting down to things like Star Wars Resistance making its broadcast debut.
Nope.
Star Wars Celebration Chicago.
Nope.
I've seen on websites people actually have countdown clocks to episode 9.
Yeah, that's because they don't have my birth date.
Well, I haven't seen that countdown clock, but it's fully in effect here this week.
Yeah, it sure is. By the way, that voice you hear is none other than, of course, my good friend and yours from Chicago. So glad he's feeling better, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Yeah, fighting a little bit of the crud this week. Don't know how it happened or where it came from, but nothing could keep me away from jumping behind the microphone to talk about Star Wars this week. There's so much happening. As I said, there's a few things to look forward to. Star Wars Resistance.
Yep.
Star Wars Celebration Chicago. Star Wars Episode 9. And a bunch of other cool things dropped in between, too. But, I mean, my favorite stuff is just merely speculating about what's going to happen in Star Wars Episode 9. But we're also getting cool news about things like the TV series and how it's going to mesh in with Disney's upcoming streaming service. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting times to be really just trying to put things in focus. That's what I think we're trying to do now more than anything, is just put the future in focus a little bit as fans as we look ahead and get these little tidbits of information, little leaks, even coming from big guys like Bob Iger himself, which we'll hear from Bob Iger later this show.
We will indeed. We've got so much. A good friend of ours, Kevin Liell, he's going to be stopping by. He'll join us in the cantina, but he's brought a very special friend who just happened to play an iconic role in Return of the Jedi. Also, no stranger to Rebel Force Radio. We've been talking about him for a long time. Simon Pegg, who we lovingly refer to as Simon Friggin' Pegg, is showing some remorse. That's been making the headlines. But I'm going to spring something on you, Jim, because you mentioned Episode 9, and this is something we haven't talked about yet. But here's a rumor. I don't know if you heard about this. This just started breaking online, I believe, yesterday or today as we're recording this show. Have you heard the rumor that Star Wars Episode 9 could be split into 2 films?
Yes, I did hear that rumor. Apparently, coming from JJ's desire to really give a grand finale to the episodic Star Wars trilogy adventures.
It wouldn't be a trilogy now, would it?
Well, I mean, the full saga, all 3 trilogies. He wants to tie them all up in Episode 9, which should be the ultimate goal. I mean, this thing has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it all comes down to the Skywalkers. So there's a lot of talk about characters coming back into the fold that maybe you wouldn't expect. Maybe we'll see an appearance by an Anakin Skywalker Force Ghost played by Hayden Christensen. Maybe we'll see Ewan McGregor come back as Obi-Wan, and Yoda, and some real prequel stuff. Something to bring it, full circle. I think we really need that. Where did the prequels begin? Episode 1 started off with Jedi ambassadors, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn, on board that diplomatic vessel heading over to do some negotiations with the Trade Federation. I mean, that's how it all began. Mm-hmm. To bring it all the way back to that, I don't know, if Trade Federation is going to be coming into play at all in Ep9. I certainly don't think it will be. But something to acknowledge those two characters that were the first characters that we see in the chronology for Star Wars. I would like to see a Qui-Gon Jinn appearance in Episode 9 to bring it full circle. Heck, I'd like to see a Watto appearance in Episode 9 to bring it full circle. But, hey, I'm crazy that way. Realistically, though, there is this talk that trying to fit so much into one film, and J.J. Abrams actually having the desire to make the biggest, longest Star Wars film of all times. It could get that Hobbit treatment where a certain movie gets split in two. Or also Harry Potter. They did that with Potter as well.
Yeah, but here's the big difference with the Lord of the Rings films, you mentioned The Hobbit, or Harry Potter for that matter, is that those were adaptations of pre-existing material. Star Wars being a film-centric franchise, I don't see it seems very unlikely to me when you have a formula of of these stories being told in trilogies. Now, Rogue One and Solo notwithstanding, but this is part of the episodic saga, and to think that they're going to split these up into two films and you've got trilogy, quadrilogy, it doesn't make any sense. Now, personally, I'm not so enamored or married to this idea that it must be a trilogy that I would sacrifice story just to keep it consistent, the number of films consistent. Not at all. But I just think it's highly unlikely, though it is being bandied about. I mean, one of the things that JJ likes is JJ likes freedom. JJ likes the ability to kind of spread his wings, whether it be asking for an extension on a release date or saying, hey, you know what, I think we need a couple of movies to wrap up this story. There are some out there that would say, well, he needs 2 movies to undo what was done in the last one.
That's the make good.
It's the mulligan, okay? Yeah. So really what he's asking for is it would be Star Wars Episode 8.5, The Mulligan, right? For you golfers out there. That's the do-over.
Yeah, I was wondering how that would play out in the crawl, because you would have Episode 9 Part 1, Episode 9 Part 2. Why not make Episode 9 Part 2 Episode 10? I mean, doesn't it? They are 2 different episodes.
Or make Part 1 Episode 8.5 for real this time.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, that could be.
There has to be a petition out there for that.
I'm sure. I'm sure
there has to be a petition.
Maybe they got those remake guys working on this.
Listen. The evidence has been presented to us, and I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that we're going to get Episode 9, and that's going to be it. The foundation of the physiology of the Star Wars films, the Skywalker saga in specific, is based on a trilogy format.
Yeah. And,
that would just seem like... you're trying to get too much milk out of the sea cow.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a phrase that's going to catch on, but
why buy the sea cow when you can get the milk for free? That's what Luke wanted to know.
Why buy the green milk, you have to say, when you could get the sea cow for free?
Now, was it green? It was green milk, wasn't it? It did have sort of a greenish hue.
It was
that milk,
and I thought that's where blue milk came from. It just wasn't fermented or whatever they had to do with it.
It starts out green.
Well, I think when you milk a cow, it's not always that stark white color.
I know. Cow milk is not white.
Right. So I think, if it gets pasteurized or whatever processing it goes through, I thought it would turn from green to blue. And I that's where that blue milk comes from. But everyone's like, no, it's green. It's green. It's not blue milk. It's green.
It's green milk.
So just stop thinking ahead.
Yeah.
But I still, there's nothing to dispute that logic, though, that the green milk is the blue milk.
But did you ever wonder why Luke just didn't decide to just latch on? Right? I mean, when he,
are you serious?
Well, wait a minute, though.
He's going to start breastfeeding with the sea cow?
Well, wait a second, though.
I mean, really,
no.
People had a big problem with the way Luke Skywalker was presented. I mean, what you're doing is like you're adding steroids to that.
Well, what I'm saying is he's right there. He's right there at the teat. So he's filling up the milk jug right from the teat, and he still has a hand, practically a hand on the teat as he sips from the bottle. How much different could it be for him to just latch on himself?
He grew up a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I went for a few years. I went to University of Kansas, Rock Chalk Jayhawk. And I knew a lot of guys from farming communities who were going to that school. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those guys had experience milking cows. And none of those guys looked like they would be the type of person who would actually put their mouth on the teat.
Okay.
And so, I mean, just by judging those guys in a real-world scenario and then taking what I know of Luke freaking Skywalker, what are you doing, man? Nobody's going to be doing that. No one. Not even, I mean, maybe Rian Johnson thought about it. But
look, it's not okay. All right. Now, I would agree with you if he had filled this thing up, gone back to his hovel there in Octu, fired up the stove, maybe warmed this stuff up a little bit to get rid of the impurities and all that, and then, strained it and then put it in. I would buy that. But he is literally just, I mean, look, we've all been there, right? You're brushing your teeth at the end of the day, and you're like, I'm not going to get the Dixie cup. I'm just going to put my mouth right here as the water's coming right out of the spigot, and I'll just rinse that way, right?
Okay, yeah, but the spigot is not the teat. So, sea cows... Conversation of sea cows is now officially retired here at Rebel Force Radio with that conversation.
It's over.
It is official.
Right.
I have a proclamation from the mayor of Podcastville, and he just sent it to me and said, you guys are no longer allowed to talk about it.
Look, if you want more conversation, just like you heard here about the sea cow teats at Rebel Force Radio, the best way to do that is to join the Patreon community. As a matter of fact, we just launched a new rush hour last week. And, Jim, you've been busy putting together some of the ringtones as we've promised and released to our Patreon community over the last couple of years. We've got more that have joined the fray.
Yes, the latest, of course, being, do you have it actually?
I do. I've got it right here. Here it is.
Baboon ass.
Yep.
So couldn't you just imagine getting a call from your mother-in-law and, you have this specific ringtone programmed for her, so it's her calling you every time your phone rings. It's your mother-in-law when you hear
Baboon ass.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that fits.
But I'll tell you what, it's a lot of people have been requesting that, so we made it available as a ringtone to all members of the RFR Patreon community. And it's so great to hear that. I mean, I swear to God, and I put this in the post, every time I hear that, I miss Carrie Fisher just a little bit more.
Yeah.
I really would have loved to have her around, for the whole Last Jedi thing, just to get her take on all of it, because everyone has been very opinionated about The Last Jedi. I would have loved to have heard Carrie with her unfiltered opinions, because that's all she could ever offer is unfiltered opinions. And so when I hear baboon ass, I miss Carrie. I think she'd be very happy to know that, too.
I think so, too. Of course, we're going to be counting down the days to Celebration Chicago coming up this spring. Boy, oh boy.
I'm digging up panel recordings that I made of previous Star Wars celebrations. Having media access gave me the ability to plug into soundboards and make excellent recordings of panels that have been rarely heard, going all the way back to Star Wars Celebration 2 in Indianapolis in 2002. And rarely have I made those complete recordings available, and you'll hear a lot of great Star Wars celebrities and personalities talking throughout the history of Star Wars Celebration. So I'm making those available as we count down to Celebration Chicago, and that's been a lot of fun to go back and get a great historical perspective on where Star Wars was as this millennium has started to unfold, you know.
Well, Rebel Force Radio does serve as a bit of a time capsule in a way. If you want to go back, I mean, we've been releasing shows steadily on a weekly basis for the better part of 12 years. So you can go back and you can say, well, what was going on in the Star Wars universe, 5 years ago at this time or 6 years ago at this time? And you can find that episode and fire it up and listen to it, and automatically, boom, you're right there. And I know, Jim, a lot of folks like to, as we build up to a new celebration, they like to go back and they like to listen to the build-up episodes of the previous celebration to kind of get themselves up, in the mood. And so that's a great way to. In fact, a buddy of ours, Chris, just went on a big road trip last month. And he was soliciting, I think via Twitter or social media, people's favorite episodes of Rebel Force Radio, going back, I think, to the Forcecast days. And then he loaded up the iPhone with all these, classic episodes. And what ranked up as far as, what he was hearing back as some of the most loved episodes are the ones where we were building up to a big convention or a film release.
Well, that's amazing that you bring all that up, because speaking of which, I'd like to open up the listener feedback mailbag real quick if I could.
Yeah.
I know it's early in the show, but you know what? I'd like to do more listener feedback early in the show, because it often seems like we run out of time, and it's really important that we respond to all these great people who write us all the time. So can we open the mailbag?
Yeah, let's open it up. Let's make it official.
You must contact me.
Play back the entire message.
What message?
C.O. Bibble.
The message.
The Emperor commands you to make contact with him. It's a trick. Send no reply.
You know that guy, he's had to have done some Shakespeare.
Oh, of course.
Know that guy. Oh, it's Horatio.
Yes.
He's definitely that type of guy.
You must contact me.
Good old C.O. Bibble.
Yeah.
We have an email sent to us at show@rebelforceradio.com by loyal RFR listener Jared, who says he's been trying to fill the void while you both take a well-deserved break. I tried to go old school and listen to an old show. During your coverage of 2009 Chicago Comic-Con, you play a clip from Ray Park as he was doing his panel talking about Darth Maul's fate. I was floored to hear him say, I don't want to spoil it, but I want to just play the clip, because a lot of people are talking about Darth Maul. He shows up in Solo. Everyone, I freaked out. I had a total meltdown about it. Trashed the theater. I even took it out to the streets and started burning and looting, and Darth Maul, I just couldn't believe it. So here's some old school Ray Park from 2009 at Chicago Comic-Con, Wizard World Chicago Comic-Con, to be specific. I think there was a while they wanted to drop the Wizard World thing and go with Chicago Comic-Con, but then I think the people who ran San Diego Comic-Con said,
yeah, not so much.
I don't know about that. Go back to Wizard World. And I preferred Wizard World. It sounded cooler anyway. So here's Ray Park doing his panel where he talks about Darth Maul's fate.
I knew how the character played out in the script, and I didn't mind getting killed off, but I wanted the killing to be gruesome, but George said it's too gruesome. We want kids to come and watch the movie. Because originally I wanted to use my horns, and when Liam and I were fighting, wanted to start using the horns and getting him and headbutting, but he says, no, we can't do that. And then I said, why don't you, originally when I push urine down the pit, I actually throw him down and grab him, and I was about to take his head off. And that's when he gets the lightsaber and takes my head off, and I fall down the pit. But they said it was too graphic and too gruesome, and you might not come back if your head's chopped off. So they teased me with the chopping in half to bring me back. So it was like, oh, you might bring me back? The character look. So... Yeah. So there's a possibility there maybe one day, but it won't be me because I'll be like the old Sith Lord.
Wrong.
No, right. They brought him back in a big way. They brought him back in animation. They brought him back now in the live-action films. So, boy, very prescient of Ray Park back there in 2009.
Yeah, but even so, that was 2009, a recording we made at Wizard World. Let's move it forward 3 years. You and me corner Ray Park. What does he always say we do to him?
Ambush.
Yeah.
Which is pretty hard to do for to a ninja.
Yeah,
this guy's the closest thing we have to a real ninja. And
you could take us both out in a single spin kick.
Right, with your pinky toe.
Yeah. Still keep drinking your coffee, Ray. I mean, who are we kidding here? But this is incredible. I took a deep dive into some of our archives and listened back to a conversation we had with Ray Park from 2012 in Dallas. And I did this because I was just curious to, with Darth Maul returning to Solo and everything. And I noticed this uncanny moment we had with Ray. And this happened, keep in mind, before the announced sale of Lucasfilm to Disney. We're talking to Ray about Clone Wars and seeing Maul return in the Clone Wars. And the conversation leads us into this, talking to Ray about Maul potentially returning. And so I was listening to that, and I'm like, I have to play some highlights on the show. So here it is. I'm telling you, it's like uncanny. And here we are talking to Ray Park. This is probably 2 weeks prior to the announcement that Lucasfilm had been sold to Disney and Star Wars films were returning.
Sam, who plays the voice,
Sam Witwer, yes.
He's a good actor. He's a really good actor. And I watched when it was coming out, and I was in New Orleans, and I was online, I was checking stuff. I went in to check in, going to Lucasfilm, because they had on StarWars.com, there was something there. So I was checking it out. And it is different, but it's a great extension to the character, and I think it's like there's been so much. Of course, I want to be the character for the rest of my life.
For sure.
Do everything possible. But Sam's a phenomenal actor, and he's great with voice, and I think he's a good fit for the character. And we've met a bunch of times, and I think he's awesome.
There's potential if Darth Maul does survive the Clone Wars. Say there's more Star Wars movies in the future, perhaps Episode 7, 8, and 9, maybe they bring Darth Maul for that.
Yeah.
And then you can bring back the character as only you can do it.
Please, Mr. Lucas.
Yes.
I would like to do it.
Wow.
Yeah. Little did we know.
Little did we know. Yeah. It's creepy. We might have known a little something. But, I don't want to pull the curtain back too far.
Well, boy, oh boy, what a difference a few years makes. And here we are on the other side of all of this excitement since the acquisition. And here's Ray Park stepping back into the robes, the cloak of Darth Maul, for real this time. Amazing. Amazing.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
Well, it's that time of year again where Jimmy Mack packs his bag and heads off to listen to Bob Iger deliver the quarterly earnings results.
Yes. We sneak the microphones in there for you guys and the Rebel Force Radio listening audience. Well, at least that's our goal, Typically, the microphones make it in, but I don't. Security meets me at the door, of course. I'm wearing the Rebel Force Radio T-shirt.
He's
say
flagged,
it loud, say it proud, right?
He's flagged completely.
But I did manage to slide the microphone into the room this year as Bob Iger spoke to investors about all kind of things happening for Disney. This is his Q3, quarter 3, earnings results spiel he does. And I have to say, Star Wars wasn't really, at the top of the list of things that Bob was talking about. Unlike previous earnings results calls, he seemed very focused, even said it was their top priority as a company to launch their streaming service. They're putting a lot behind that. They want to take on Netflix. They're clear about the fact that it's not really going to be as big as Netflix, so it'll be priced accordingly. we presume. Indications are that it'll be a cheaper alternative to Netflix.
Yeah.
But it, again, won't have the big catalog that Netflix has. But it certainly will have a lot of interesting things, especially interesting for Star Wars fans. And he didn't bring up Solo at all. Obviously, it was a miss for them financially as far as the box office goes. And a lot of talk was going on about, again, as I said, the Disney streaming service and the Fox acquisition. A lot of talk about ESPN, too, because ESPN has certainly turned into a thorn in Disney's portfolio. But, again, as I said, they took calls from various investors, and Bob Iger was asked a question, and I'm going to play the whole question, too. This is a question about old Star Wars films on the streaming service.
Pretty much every brand you listed, I believe, has historical content obligations to other licensing partners. So, for instance, I'm thinking about Star Wars. The movies are either on Netflix or even on Turner cable syndication in the States. Marvel movies are on Starz or Netflix, that sort of thing. So, I guess my question is, can you just confirm that when you launch, a whole bunch of those historical products associated with those brands, I guess, will not be on your service? It doesn't sound like. In fact, there's some scenario where there's no Star Wars old movies at all, maybe. I'd love a comment on that. I might be wrong because I don't know the exact carve-outs. So that's the main question. And if that's true, how big a deal is it, and how are you going to message that, are you thinking, with your consumers? Thanks.
Well, we knew when we made the decision to do this that a number of the products that have been made and that will be made in the rest of 2018 are encumbered by licensing arrangements that we have with a number of different entities, and notably Netflix and Starz, you mentioned. There are some windows down the road that enable us to put those films on our service. I don't think we've been specific about that, but you'll see when we launch. But starting in 2019, the studio movie slate is clean and unencumbered, and so one of the reasons why we've talked about, I don't want to say walk before we run, because not quite that. There's going to be a fair amount of running going on. But we want to make sure we're managing expectations. The price of the service will reflect that, the volume of the product that's on. But it's also one of the reasons why we're creating a fair amount of original content for it as well. Original Star Wars series, original Pixar series, original Marvel series, and so on. And some original films as well, because it's clear that from a library's perspective, while there's certainly a lot of volume, the recent studio slate will not fully be available at any one time because of the existing deals. And it will, take time for those rights ultimately to revert back to us. But what we have been doing is making sure that since the time that we made a decision to bring this service out, we've not done anything that further encumbers any of our product.
All right. So if you follow that, he's saying that they had the idea to build a streaming service probably at some point early in 2017, late 2016.
Mm-hmm.
They had an idea, hey, let's take on Netflix. But meanwhile, a lot of their properties, films, series, what have you, are tied up in deals, distribution deals with all kind of different things. In the case of Star Wars specifically, they're locked into a deal with TNT, Turner Network Broadcasting, for multiple years. I think the deal expires in 2024.
Yeah.
So unless,
as a matter of fact,
Disney,
Jim, I recall us covering that story when that deal was made.
That's a big deal. So that's another 5 years, 5.5 years. So the Disney streaming app will then, or whatever you want to call it, streaming service, will eventually absorb all of their properties that have been licensed out to other broadcast venues. And then you'll be able to find all Disney stuff exclusively on that streaming service. But it's going to take a number of years, 5 to 10 years, before you see their catalog really fully being fleshed out. And that's just, the reality of the deals that they made before they had the idea to do their own streaming service. So Star Wars is definitely locked up. And everything. Episode 9 is the only film that is not locked up in some sort of distribution deal with a broadcast channel or network. And so that'll be the first Star Wars film we'll most likely see on the Disney streaming service. Now, of course, there's going to be a lot of Star Wars product there. There's going to be the Clone Wars. There's going to be the Jon Favreau live-action series, which we have some additional news about. There's going to be
Ewoks and droids.
Maybe. I would love to see it. I would love to see them just empty out the closets and put everything up there. Holiday special.
The Ewok adventure films.
All of it. The entire history. You name it. Put it up there. The old TV specials, like Making of Star Wars.
Yeah, I was going to say the behind-the-scenes
creatures.
stuff. Yeah.
You know, I just make it available at the touch of a fingertip, all in one place. But again, you know, CBS Fox distributed a lot of those making of specials back in the 80s, like Classic Creatures. I know it was CBS Fox. How much of that reverted to CBS, how much of that reverted to Fox, and how much of that reverted to Lucasfilm over the years, who knows? I think Lucasfilm owns all of that stuff because they released it on the big Blu-ray from 2011. So they must own the rights to all of that. So you could park it all on a Disney Star Wars channel, on the Disney streaming app, what have you. That would be a lot of fun. We've always dreamed about a Star Wars channel and what could populate it. And, of course, I think the cornerstone of that concept would always have been the Star Wars films. But those will not be available on the Disney streaming service, and we probably won't see those show up for 5 or 6 years.
Well, we didn't hear about it until reports in the press detailed an effort by Disney to regain those streaming rights. It seems that they offered Turner, an undisclosed amount of money to sort of buy them out, and Turner said, "Yeah, no thanks." I mean, they're not stupid for a couple of reasons. One, they know that obviously broadcasting Star Wars films, that's a great source of it's a great carrot to dangle out in front of your advertisers. So clearly the advertisers want to get in front of Star Wars fans. That's number one. And number two is when you've got a company the size and scale of Disney and they want something bad enough, I mean, you're not gonna take the first offer, right? Personally, I would be very surprised if they hold out for much longer. I think that Disney is going to probably prevail here and reclaim those streaming rights. I would not be.
I don't know.
Iger. Surprised.
That's interesting. You say that. Iger to me sounded like he was accepting his fate, especially when he noted what's on tap for the Disney theatrical 2019 schedule. It's beyond impressive. Let's do a quick rundown. Captain Marvel, Tim Burton's Dumbo, Avengers 4, Aladdin, Toy Story 4, The Lion King. That's the live-action version of The Lion King. The Jungle Cruise with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson doing a movie based on the classic Disneyland ride. Frozen 2, and Star Wars Episode 9. All of those films will be available to be accessed via the Disney streaming service. I think you can build a streaming service just based on that slate of releases alone. Those are massive franchises. Then jump into 2020. You have Mulan. You have Maleficent 2. You have the Indiana Jones sequel. There'll be Marvel films released, Pixar films, and all of that stuff will be readily available for Disney streaming moving forward. So I think Iger might be smart in just saying, you know what? The brand is being promoted on Turner Broadcasting and will be for the next 5 years, and most of America has access to that. Nobody in America currently has access to the Disney streaming service. So why not just keep Star Wars alive on cable television as far as the theatrical releases go? Keep it alive on cable television for the next 5 years, and then it'll build up 5 more years of fans who only have access to basic cable. And I think that's kind of a smart move to wash their hands of it, not try to own everything and all that. Once we're talking a mere 5 years. In corporate world, that's not that long. So I think they're going to be patient and they're going to wait it out, and they're going to leave the shows, the films, on basic cable, whatever Turner wants to do with it, for the next 5 years. And then they'll absorb it into what will then be a very vibrant platform for Disney streaming, I think. When you hear about how aggressive they are, they're going to, have films, they're going to have Star Wars series, animation, Marvel, Pixar. So it will definitely have a big fan base. Then by the time you want to drop Star Wars films in there, the deal will be sealed.
I'm going to go with they're going to launch, and they're probably going to have the Star Wars films, the whole saga.
Oh, you think they're going to open up that checkbook? Iger's going to do that.
Yeah,
is his big last move. He's going to open up. Well, the shareholders might feel otherwise.
I mean, look, they wanted,
like I am.
They wanted distribution rights of Episode 4: A New Hope so badly they decided to buy 20th Century Fox. It was apparently a better deal for them to buy the whole company than it was to buy the distribution rights.
Okay,
of Episode 4.
It's very quaint. You want to base that entire decision on Star Wars.
Well, we are a Star Wars podcast, aren't we? We're not talking about,
Bravo.
I mean, I know they want to get Hugh Jackman into an Avengers film. I know that. That's it. But I don't think he's going to do that, right? He's not going to do that.
I don't know.
He's hung up the adamantium for good, right?
I don't know. You show him enough dead presidents, he'll change his mind.
Well, all right. Let's talk a little bit about continuing this conversation in the future of Star Wars. Star Wars Resistance, that is, I know we're all thinking about the Clone Wars. We are, but Star Wars Resistance is the next new program on tap for Star Wars. Some rumors about when it might debut, and this is according to a German reporter, a Jedi Bibliotech. All right, so over in Germany, they're talking about a premiere of Star Wars Resistance around middle of October, so October 13th to be exact, a 2-part premiere called The Recruit. All right, and this is the first season of the series. It'll feature 22 episodes. And this is the description. Quote, Resistance fighter Poe Dameron tasks young pilot Kazuda Kaz Xiono with spying I'm going to go with Xiono, right? Xiono.
Xiono. I'm going with Xiono myself. But I'm relieved to get confirmation from you that you are pronouncing it Xiono as well. So, listeners, I think we have a 50-50 chance of it being called Xiono. It looks like Xiono, right?
What else could it be? Xiono.
Xiono.
I mean, it certainly it's the third line of an eye chart, but still.
Kaz sounds like a Star Wars name to me. That sounds like a Star Wars name. Kaz Xiono.
Right.
That sounds like a Star Wars name. I like it.
Kaz Xiono. So he's going to be tasked by Poe Dameron to spy on the First Order. Now, at the time of this series, this got me excited. At the time of this series, little is known about the secret organization and its strength. We're talking about, what is this? Do we have a timeline as far as before the events of Episode 7? I don't think we do.
I would put it in like anywhere from think Rebels, that was based 5, then to about 2 years outside of the events of A New Hope. Maybe even closer. I'm not even sure where Rebels actually ended on the timeline, but obviously prior to the events of Rogue One and A New Hope.
Right.
So I would imagine taking a similar approach with Resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Started about 5 years out, and let the series run for 3-4 years, whatever, and bring it closer then to The Force Awakens. I mean, you would probably even go much closer to The Force Awakens.
Yeah. Well, we've got a full description here of this premiere. I mean, this does follow the model of these big 2-parters. So you got The Recruit And we got Kaz. He's spying on the First Order. In order to fulfill his mission, Kaz travels to the space station Colossus, which is being used by many ships to refuel and do repairs. However, there are also dangerous races taking place there. After Kaz bragged with his piloting skills at his arrival there, he is soon drawn into one of the races. I don't know what this could be. This could be a pod race, maybe, we might be seeing here in Star Wars Resistance. Who knows?
That would be cool.
That would be fun, cool. Yeah.
I bet they would go with something probably a little more unique to the era. And, you have to even wonder, do pod races still exist in the...
Well, keep in mind, this is Dave Filoni,
trilogy.
right? I mean, Dave has a profound respect for the history and legacy of Star Wars. I could see somebody like a Dave Filoni dusting off the pod race.
Mm-hmm. Could be. So this is a little blurb, this little description that was made available to some German media. And to me, it all seems pretty legit. Still hearing things about the animated series indicating that it will play to a more youthful audience, maybe a la the Lego Freemaker Adventures. I have heard that about this show, but it sure sounds exciting to me what I'm seeing here. I love Poe Dameron. He's one of my favorite characters from the sequel trilogy. Kaz Ziono. The whole thing sounds like a really interesting setup and very Star Wars-y feeling. It's people get criticized for saying, does that feel like Star Wars? Is it Star Wars-y? But you know what? It's just one of those little things that you kind of like a little itchy scratch when you go, oh, yeah, that's Star Wars right there. Yeah. I mean, it's almost a very personal thing. But to me, this feels like it seems pretty consistent with Star Wars stuff. Again, ringing some bells that make me think a little bit about the Lego Freemaker Adventures as well. Yeah. I don't know why that
I didn't really get into that. Now, my son Parker, he's 5, and occasionally he'll run across it on one of his apps on his iPad, and he's seems to really enjoy it. But, it's not like he's saying, oh, I got to see every one of these, or I need to download them, or, I'm really following the plot here. I think it's not a show like that.
Right.
But at any rate, I would hope that they would be skewing that age just a little bit older. But you know what? Look, we're getting a new series from Jon Favreau that's going to cost $10 million an episode. So what do we have to be upset about, right?
Right.
So we'll see.
Now, about that budget.
Yeah.
About that budget. $10 million an episode. That sounds like kind of expensive to me. But somebody mentioned to me, oh, no, Game of Thrones. And I was like, well, they're doing episodes that are more than $10 million per? The 6th season of Game of Thrones had a budget of $100 million for 10 episodes. Ring any bells? So at the very best, it might be, it might at least match what is the most expensive Game of Thrones episode. When it first started off, Game of Thrones averaged about $6 million per episode.
Yeah. Now they're up to $13 million. That's
on
the last
Game of
number
Thrones?
I heard that this final season they're looking at a $13 million per episode budget, but that's not very far off from this $10 million per episode of Star Wars. I mean,
no,
Star Wars doesn't have dragons.
No, but it has all kind of cool things. Don't you forget, like Sarlacc and Rathtars. Okay, so
all right.
For some reason, I sounded like I was 12 years old right there.
Rathtars.
Cool things like Sarlacc and Rathtars. But I do want to see some creature feature episodes of this live action show. I don't want that to be forgotten. I love seeing big creatures in Star Wars, and so I definitely think that's an essential element. And something that, even in Solo, we got some of that with the gang lord there on Corellia, Lady Proxima. She was kind of a weird, wormy creature. Yeah, so that's you got to have some weird creatures in Star Wars. You always have to.
Yeah, but the cost of creating those creatures is a lot cheaper. It's a lot faster than it was. But look, the fact of the matter is that Star Wars has this his history, this legacy of consistently destroying barriers and paving complete new ground when it comes to the areas of special effects and storytelling, all of that. And I would hate to see that just because the box is getting smaller with the TV. I'd hate to see that not be the case, not continue. I mean, you look at Clone Wars and how groundbreaking that really was. I mean, it was the animation style, the quality, the voice acting, the writing, all of it was just incredible. So I would hope that Jon Favreau or no, that the very first live action Star Wars series of all time would also break that kind of ground.
I'm happy to hear it's a 10-episode season.
Very defined, very focused.
Wrap your head around that. Binge it in a weekend, no problem. Imagine 10 episodes of a new Star Wars series suddenly show up on your TV.
Yeah. Right, 10 hours.
And you've got a weekend ahead of you. I think there's going to be some amazing watch parties. Maybe that's something we should get together and do with some Rebel Force Radio listeners.
Yeah, we should anticipate.
Is have a serious binge of the 10-episode season when it gets launched. Oh, I'm down with that. That's a good idea. So, you guys let us know what you think. Show at rebelforceradio.com. See if there's some interest in that. I know some venues in the Chicago area we could jump into, no problem. But, of course, everyone's heading to Chicago in April next year. I don't know if they want to come back in October or whenever the streaming service launches. But maybe.
Sure.
I could get you back.
Oh, I could come back. I'd easily come back.
I got Billy Mack here. It's all good.
Speaking of comebacks, how about Carrie Fisher, her big comeback in episode 9? We've got her brother Todd. He's been making the rounds talking about the decision that was made that unused footage of Carrie from the filming of not episode 8, but episode 7 will be used to bring Princess Leia to life once more in this finale, this ultimate ending to the Skywalker saga. Todd sat down with Entertainment Tonight Canada to talk about Carrie's appearance in episode 9. And we got some clips here. Let's go here. Here's Todd talking about Carrie's return.
Isn't that magical that the things that she shot a few years ago are frozen in time, so to speak, and then they've been reborn into the final Star Wars, where she is truly the character that needed to continue. I mean, it's not just me as a brother. I have a connection to this thing that's different, but I'm also a fan of this storyline. But it's my sister, and my sister and Princess Leia are the same thing. And so the idea of that story stopping and her not carrying forward was really disturbing to me. And I kept saying to people, no, this needs to continue. I know I was a little annoying even to Disney because I kept saying, well, from the brothers' perspective, we would want to see Carrie continue, of course. And, and the fans, I think, kind of, we could use the word even demand, that this carry on. So it's just awesome that it worked out this way. And thanks to J.J. Abrams, it's going to be, I'm sure, very magical and important to us all.
Oh, well, I love hearing him talk. I just love from the brothers' perspective. Yes, stand up for the brothers' perspective. Yeah. And giving props to J.J. Abrams. And Todd Fisher is just the type of guy I cannot wait to see and hear his reaction after episode 9 gets released next year. Because I think he's like Carrie, where there is just a flow of energy out of him, and it's almost, nobody is unfiltered like Carrie was, but he's just real. Yeah, he comes off as a very real guy for someone who's like Carrie, born into Hollywood royalty.
Yeah, I don't want to, rain on his parade here, but I've said before, I think that these characters have to be able to outlive the actors that defined them, that created them. I got news for Todd Fisher. Carrie is not Princess Leia. Princess Leia is not Carrie. Princess Leia is a fictional character that was played wonderfully by Carrie Fisher, but Princess Leia has been seen in animation, and I think that it's this idea that this actor is the character and that character is the actor. I think it's a very, very dangerous place to go. I really do. I don't see how you can have any kind of longevity or future.
But in the perspective, sorry.
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, it's okay. No.
I heard you
wasn't.
sigh.
No. My sigh was not about you cutting me off. My sigh was about I don't like being the guy saying this, but it's truly my opinion that these characters have to be they have to transcend the actor. They came out of the imagination and the creation of George Lucas. They're not necessarily. They don't belong to Carrie Fisher. They don't belong to Todd Fisher. They don't belong to anybody. They belong to the fans. They belong to the people who still turn out to hear and watch these stories unfold. That was my side.
Right, I get it. Okay, all right, I get it. But in terms of Episode 9, I think that it's clear you have to have Carrie if the character of Leia is going to continue throughout Episode 9. I don't think at the end of the day Todd Fisher is saying that the character can no longer be functional for any storytelling beyond Episode 9. I think that Star Wars and the core characters are going to be reimagined beyond the Solo film. I think we'll see Leia. I think we'll see Luke again. I think we'll see both of them again. I wouldn't even be surprised if, God forbid, the original trilogy gets rebooted. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, just look through history. It happens constantly. But also on the other side of the coin, there are some franchises which are hands off. All right, nobody's tried to remake Gone with the Wind or The Wizard of Oz or The Godfather or Star Wars. And I think those guys belong under that bubble. But I'm just saying the potential for some sort of reboot of the original trilogy story with new young actors could happen in the future. Maybe the Solo film was a little too soon.
Yeah.
But in defense of Todd, though, in the perspective of Episode 9, considering what we're talking about here, I think he has all the right in the world to claim Carrie's ownership of the character at this time. I think it's right because he knows that there is existing footage of Carrie that J.J. Abrams and the ILM wizards are going to be able to use to incorporate her into the story. It's movie magic. Todd talks a little bit about that too, like on a tech perspective about how they're going to bring Carrie back for Episode 9.
Well, as you know, when you make a movie, there's things that end up on what they say the cutting room floor. There's outtakes. There's a lot of things that don't make it into the movie. And sometimes, in this case, it was even difficult for people to want to go back and look at every frame of footage to see what was usable or what could be used in this fashion. And then to create a way to weave it into the script and the story in a way that is important and it is good storytelling. And so, it's not an easy task. And it's not easy, I could tell you for me, I have to watch a lot of these old movies and things, and it's heartbreaking sometimes to see your family, that has left us. But if you believe the way our family does in the Force, then, we aren't really apart.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. This is, it's tough because, you're dealing with someone who has lost a very close relative, sister. Your siblings, you can't get much closer than that. But at the same time, I still feel as though the appropriate message is that these characters are indelible and they are going to last forever. But
I think they will.
They can be
the box office.
Else.
Now, there was no problem embracing Han Solo for a feature film not being starred by Harrison Ford, and we rolled along with that project, and it turned out to be a box office disappointment for Disney based on projections, obviously. And so, how quickly do you think they want to go back to that well? I think it's going to take some time. I mean, these are, like you said, indelible characters. We all want to see more Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, R2, 3PO, Darth Vader, all of that. We want to see more of that. And we will see that. Maybe when we take our grandchildren to the theaters in 20 years or so.
Yeah.
But I think that the future is bright for the legacy of Star Wars, but I do imagine that these characters will be mined again beyond the solo film to dig deeper into some of these original trilogy characters. I really do. That's what I'm going back to Todd Fisher's statement about Carrie Carrie is Princess Leia, and that, for a guy who lost his sister and who definitely sees a lot of Carrie's personality in Leia. We get it. All right. Carrie doesn't own the character of Leia necessarily, but I think for episode 9, the character should be her if it's possible. And it sure sounds like it is.
Yeah, I see that. I'm glad it's happening. Don't get me wrong. I am glad it's happening. But to be honest with you, I felt that the last 2 films sort of cut around Carrie quite a bit. Maybe not so much in 7. It really wasn't her movie, quote unquote. But in episode 8, I thought the very convenient coma was sort of put in there to keep the character in the story, but at the same time not have to deal with Carrie Fisher.
Well, I've heard a lot of people criticize Rian Johnson's script as being lazy script writing. And I mean, when you shine a spotlight on it like that, and then I see where you're coming from. If I were doing, and of course I'm the guy who always says, let's not judge the Star Wars for what it isn't. Let's judge it for what it is. And I do believe that. You guys, I do honor and revere the cinematic mythology. Don't get me wrong. But if I were to do the sequel trilogy, if I was writing the script, I would have featured these main characters like crazy, and have them interacting with the newer characters, yes. And then use that as a launching pad for the next generation of Star Wars films.
Right.
Establish them with the core group. Really fully integrate them into the story that we've known. And then, when it's time, when Episode 9 wraps up everything, wraps up the Skywalker saga, like it's now being promoted as the finale to the Skywalker saga. Keep in mind, this is the first time anyone has indicated that Episode 9 is the finale. The absolute finale. We're getting absolute terms here. That's the first time. So why not go heavy on original trilogy characters? Han, Luke, and Leia, Chewie, R2, 3PO. Go heavy on those and have Rey, Finn, Poe, have them with them, and let them build those characters along the ride. And then by the time you end up at Episode 9, everyone's on equal footing. And then that baton gets passed to the next generation. And then you launch a whole new series after that without the burden of Harrison, Carrie, and Mark.
Yeah.
And fan expectation, of course, which is off the flippin' charts.
Yeah. fan angst and fan expectation. It's all at a fever pitch, that's for sure. Last quote here. This is, again, going back to Todd Fisher. He's talking about the actual footage and what could be available out there to piece this performance together.
It's like, what does he know? What do you know, Todd? We want to know what you know, because you know something, Todd.
I was given some information about the different things that were there, but I can't address it. You can suffice it to say that you've seen what was in the what was the name of the last film? Not the most recent one, but the one, The Last Jedi, The Force Awakens. So all of this footage obviously was shot around The Force Awakens. So if you look at all the scenes that were in The Force Awakens, you can kind of imagine some things that, could be made available.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. You had the General Leia outfit. You also had
baboon ass
there at the end. So beyond those two looks, I'm not quite sure what else might be available, and it's very different from the look that she had in Episode 8, which she was, very much more along the lines of sort of the royal figure, as opposed to the general, wearing her boots and her uniform and the vest and the whole thing. So that's just the only two outfits that I'm aware of, but there might have been an additional scene or two shot with Carrie Fisher, and maybe we'll find it that way. Who knows?
I'm just surprised to hear they're not utilizing any footage from The Last Jedi. Wouldn't you, think that, Todd Fisher said himself, with the natural process of shooting movies, you get a lot of footage of these actors and actresses on screen. And why wouldn't they use something from The Last Jedi? Yeah. Was there nothing left? Was there nothing left? Or nothing that fit? Or just JJ doesn't want to use stuff he didn't shoot? He wants the film.
That could be. Why going back to Episode 7? Yeah.
He wants the film to be strictly directed by him, every single frame.
Wow. All right, we got one more story here we'll get to, and this one was interesting. This is Simon Pegg has come out and publicly admitted to feeling guilty because he was one of those piling on Ahmed Best for his character of Jar Jar Binks back at the time of the release of Episode 1. So he was talking to Now This Entertainment, and while he was promoting the Mission Impossible, he's in those Mission Impossible movies.
Right.
And this, of course, comes out after Ahmed Best revealed that he had at one time contemplated suicide because his the treatment that he had after debuting as Jar Jar Binks was really, really, really bad. So here's Simon Pegg, and we've covered Simon Pegg's long-standing
We've been harshly critical of Simon Pegg and his harsh criticisms of the Star Wars prequels, and George Lucas for that matter. As a matter of fact, when Simon Pegg got cast in the Clone Wars to do the voice of Dengar, we were pretty heated up about that. But, I'm always willing to give someone the chance to evolve. I think life is nothing but a series of evolution. Unfortunately, we live in a social media age where somebody is being, people are being called out for things they said a decade ago. And there are just some things that I think you have to always keep in consideration. People evolve and grow every day, really. And so I give Simon a little flexibility. Plus, I backed off of Simon a lot when he starred as Unkar Plutt in The Force Awakens, just because I felt like, what? He was starting to show some more responsibility for Star Wars at that point, I think. I can't remember. I remember, the most recent critical stuff I've seen from Simon Pegg was it directed in the Star Wars direction came in about 2016. So probably after The Force Awakens. But hey, we used to call him Simon frickin' Pegg here because it's like, why are you going out of your way to crap on Star Wars over and over and over again. So
because you're such
a
big fan, such a big fan.
Well, that's just the thing. It was like the whole definition of fan. I'm not trying to define a fan. You can still be a fan and hate on what you love. Listen, I'm a sports fan, and when you cheer on last place teams, you have an undying loyalty to that team, but yet you're not immune to seeing all the problems right in front of your face. So you can be harshly critical about that team, that sports team you pledge so much loyalty to. You wear the shirts, you wear their jerseys, you wear their hats. You have undying love for this ball club. But my God, you can just go off on them like nobody's business. Yeah. This guy sucks. He's the worst ever. Yeah. Think about it. So, putting that kind of mentality, that sports fan mentality, into a Star Wars fandom, I kind of get how you can be harshly critical like that of something you say you love. So Simon obviously has been harshly critical, and now he's feeling bad.
I feel so ashamed of the fact that there was actually a human victim in that. I think most people were regarding Jar Jar Binks like he was a real creature, and wailing on him for being annoying or whatever, or not liking him. But there was a person behind that. And I read that and just thought, Christ, I'm one of those people. And it makes me feel awful. There's no diplomacy in that. There's no empathy. We're becoming very, very insular as human beings. We're becoming very self-driven, selfist, our opinion, our needs, our wants. And I feel sorry for Kelly Marie Tran, because she just was in a film. It's a film. That's all it is. None of it matters. None of it. I just think it'd be nice if everyone just got on, and stopped being so aggressive.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Probably the first time I've ever agreed so much, so strongly with Simon frickin' Pegg.
We are talking about the news that Ahmed Best has revealed that he actually did contemplate suicide because of all the harsh backlash he received from being Jar Jar Binks in the film. And something that Simon Pegg says in that sound clip that I think is very important is that Jar Jar Binks was the first photorealistic character, alien character, to be a lead in a major motion film. And a lot of people just looked at the character, the creature, and they didn't acknowledge the person that was behind all of that. And that was Ahmed Best, who, So, a lot of heat came in his direction, and he was shocked by that. He was absolutely shocked. Didn't see it coming from a mile away. Thought Jar Jar was going to be beloved by kids and adults, and it's fantasy. Never saw that coming. Yeah. So, but maybe things are changing. Maybe people are going to be, like Simon Pegg, people who are in platforms that have a lot of ears pointing in their direction will be a little more thoughtful about things like that, and not crap all over a fellow artist. I think that's the thing that lit the bulb over Simon's head. Is that here's a guy who's just adding content and contributing to the Star Wars saga, and people are really taking out a lot of aggressive stuff on him. So,
yeah, for sure.
Hey, it's James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I must tell you, the source for the Force is Rebel Force Radio, your source for the Force. The Force is strong here indeed.
Okay, it's time. That time again. We're going to venture off into the cantina with our special guest this week, Kevin Liell, and a very special friend of Kevin's.
Star Wars Cantina.
Where are you going, Master?
For a drink. Sorry about the mess. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
All right, let's just saddle in here in the cantina. We haven't been in the cantina for a while. It's great to be back. We got our regular stools here. And we are joined by a good friend of the show, been with us for a very long time, one of our favorites. Kevin Liell is back.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Hey, Kevin.
But Kevin is not alone. I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, Kevin Liell. I mean, sure, he's a great artist and all that, but he's not worthy of a whole Cantina segment. I mean,
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. But I brought somebody who is.
Indeed, you have. So without further ado, Kevin, why don't you introduce us to this great friend of yours?
I'd like to introduce a very good friend of mine, Mr. Mark Dodson. Of course, he played Salacious Crumb. Mark, you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, Salacious
I do want to say hi.
Salacious B. Crumb. Salacious Crumb is like a cult idol in my house. People, there. So Mark, you do all the laughs for Salacious, or do you do everything that comes out of Salacious?
I do everything that comes out.
Yeah.
But,
well, not everything.
What are you trying to say, Jim?
No, but Tim Rose puppeteers him.
Right.
But I am the voices and the sound, the cackles, and all the, all that comes out of him.
That's amazing. Iconic. And I guess saying, everything that comes out of him is kind of, I don't mean to say that you are like Salacious's X-Lax or anything, but, those monkey lizards, they sometimes are not the cleanest.
Well, when they have them in the cages, they throw their dookie at you, So,
Just like at Jabba's Zoo. But you know what? We have a collection here, a montage of your work in Return of the Jedi as Salacious Crumb. Somehow I obtained very clean audio of you as Salacious. This is actually probably post effects, but it's still.
Wait a minute! Whoa! What?
Yeah. Check it out. We have Salacious audio here. I'm going to play for you.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
You want to hear this?
Yeah.
All right, I guess I might want to put my headphones on for this.
Oh, you do?
All right, here it is.
Okay. I'm putting them on.
All right. Here it is. Oh, does that bring back some memories?
Oh, my God. Where'd you get that?
Yeah, you know what? I've had that in my stash for a long time. In the mid-'90s, I started collecting Star Wars sound effects. And for no real reason other than the fact I was working in radio, and I came across a catalog of sound effects libraries from Sound Ideas. That was the name of the company. And they sent me this catalog, and I started flipping through it, and they had the Lucasfilm library there. And I flipped the page. I saw it was there with the big Lucasfilm logo and everything, and I freaked out. I thought, oh, my God, can I have access to all those incredible sound effects that were created by Ben Burtt and everything? So I dug into it, and it was more of their traditional sound effects like airplanes and gunfire and ocean waves.
Sure.
It was more of a generic library. So
it's it's Ben Burtt's library that he created.
Absolutely, yes.
Awesome. That's incredible. I didn't know that existed, man. I want a copy of that.
Well,
I don't have it.
I think I have it, but unfortunately, there were no Star Wars sounds included in there. Like I said, it was
That's okay. They got Salacious Crumb. What else did you need?
Well, no, that's not. But that's not where I got the Salacious Crumb. When I saw that ad for that Lucasfilm library, I was so disappointed they didn't have the Star Wars sound effects in it. So I started collecting the Star Wars sound effects. And this was tough because this was pre-internet, really, when I started doing it. So I would be playing the films forward, backward, phase reversing the audio, doing whatever I could to extract audio. Now, this piece of audio I did not take. I think it came off of a CD-ROM that was released in the mid to late 90s, a Star Wars CD-ROM, and I extracted all the audio files off of that CD-ROM. And this is where I found all the Salacious sounds.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's what got, seeing that ad for the Lucasfilm sound effects library, I thought, oh my God, there has to be Star Wars stuff in there. No lightsabers, TIE fighters, nothing.
Of it. No.
So I decided to build my own.
Okay, so earlier, I got a little mixed up there. So earlier when you said, and they just had planes and bombs,
Right.
you know, those kind of things. Literally, that's all they had. That was they didn't give you any of the really good stuff.
No,
okay,
no,
well,
not the specific stuff. You know,
not the Star Wars stuff.
Right, it was generic stuff like crickets and
crickets.
animals.
Did I hear crickets?
Yeah, earlier before we started rolling here, we heard a bunch of crickets from Kevin Liell's house.
Yeah, because I'm not allowed to sit. I'm not allowed to sit outside while I'm on Rebel Force Radio, and now I'm in my living room.
It was louder than Dagobah. Louder than Dagobah. I have to say
it was louder than Dagobah. Yeah,
for sure. But you know what? We mentioned, of course, Ben Burtt. I mean, the audio wizard of the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. And if I recall, Mark, Ben had a lot to do with your beginnings in the business, particularly as a voice actor. When did you first hook up with Ben Burtt and get to know the guys at Industrial Light and Magic? So I think that was your entree into all this.
That was so. Well, really, it goes back to 81. Moved up to Marin from Los Angeles and to work. I took a job with Lucasfilm to work as a laborer. I wanted to get into production, and they were looking. The only thing they had going on was they were looking for laborers and carpenters to build Skywalker Ranch, and they were also working on over at ILM, the Kerner Company, in San Rafael. They were working on a building for Ben Burtt, the sound building, the sprockets. It ended up being the sound editing, sound period or whatever, comma,
right?
Editing, and what am I trying to think of? Computer graphics, like in the days when the computers were huge.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
You know, when they had to have whole rooms with the, you know, it looked like the CIA or something, with all the computers going. So I went up there. I was doing that, and I worked for Skywalker Development Company, which was part of Lucasfilm, and I started out as a laborer. And so I built the building that I first ever recorded in. So, of course, being at Lucasfilm, being around everybody, I got to meet a lot of people. And one of the people was Ben Burtt. And I always did impersonations, although, once again, I really wanted to be in production. Mm-hmm. But I'd always done, impersonations. And I'd done them for friends, at a party. There were a lot of Lucasfilm parties and things, and drinking and have a good time. And little silly stuff would come out, and people started saying, you should let Ben know that you can do stuff because you're pretty good. And, I'm like, And they said, no, let him know. He'll probably have you come and try out. He's always looking for voices. So I did, and he did. And that's what happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first?
Were you putting yourself out there just sort of in general, or was there a specific call for a specific character? Were they working on Return of the Jedi at that time?
At that point, they were working on Return of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'll have you in. Mm-hmm. Oh, so he actually had me in. So I go to the studio that when I walked in, and I said, oh, wow, it came out beautiful. And Ben's like, oh, that's right. You helped build this studio. And I said, yeah, I was the laborer. I carried all the lumber in here and took all the cuttings out. And
are you talking about the tech building at Skywalker Ranch?
No. Over at Kerner.
Oh, Kerner. Okay.
Kerner Company.
Got it.
Is what it was called. So nobody knew what it really was. But that was ILM.
Right.
ILM and then Sprockets is what it was called. And that was Ben's sound. And like I say, and Marsha was there editing, and Marsha Lucas, and everybody was working right there over in San Rafael while Skywalker Ranch was being built. So eventually I did go out to Skywalker, but have you been to that building?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. An amazing building. Amazing.
I know it by heart still. I carried I was the only laborer on that building. There was a lot of people working, and I was trying to keep up with them all.
So at the time you go in and you start laying down some of your stuff for Ben Burtt, did you know what kind of creature or were you just did he just say, give me some sounds? I mean, how did that work?
No, I came in and he said, I have this character and his name is Admiral Ackbar, and he described him. And he said, and so here's a scene where they're looking at the Death Star, and here's the lines. And he gave me the paper with the copy with the lines, and he said, what do you think? Come up with what you think. And I started looking at it, and I just picked up a piece of paper off my stand. I didn't have a stand at the time either. Ben didn't have a stand in there, and I took the paper in my hand and I started shaking so bad. I got so nervous. I didn't even expect to get so nervous. I don't know what happened. I mean, it was like to the point where I couldn't read the page because my hand was shaking that bad. Wow. And I wasn't even going to try to hide it at that point. Usually you're nervous. You don't want anybody to know, right? You're cool. Yeah. You're cool. Well, it was so obvious. I just went, oh my God. And Ben's like, what's wrong? And I said, I'm so nervous. I'm shaking so bad. I can't even read this. And he's like, oh, just relax. Take your time. So I'll take this script right here. So I'm shaking, and I said, all right, just give me a minute. Let me and he's like, okay, no big deal to him, and take your time. So I walked away. I'll walk away here in my booth. Walk over here. And I walked away, and I went, okay. All right. Okay. All right. I stopped shaking. I'm ready. And he came out from behind before I could even start. And he said, no, give me the script. And he took the script and he went back behind his podium. At this point, I really thought I had offended Ben Burtt. And I thought, well, there went my chance. I'm done. But no, he turned around. He said, you know what you just did over there? And I'm like, are you laughing? And well, yeah. And he says, I got a creature that's going to be perfect for. Forget Admiral Ackbar. We're going to do a bunch of that today. And I'm like, okay, perfect. I don't even have to try. I don't even have to hold a page. I could just cackle. And we did. And he took me through, I'd say, a good 20 minutes of scene. They weren't scenes from the movie. He said, you're a little creature. You're part bird, rat, and monkey. That's what he thought he was.
So you didn't have a photo or anything to draw from. Just that description of what he said.
No, I had just made a fool of myself over in the corner, and she's like, just keep making a fool of yourself. I guess I didn't need to see it. He just wanted me to do that.
What was the source of all that? That was just pure nervous energy, or was this a sound that you were known to make in the past?
Yeah. That's I'm glad you asked that, because people don't usually. Thanks. Besides the fact that doing it was out of fear and loathing in Marin County, really it was out of fear and nerves and everything. So I had all that energy and I wanted to get it out. I don't know why, but I decided to do that cackle. That cackle is something that my grandma taught me that right around Halloween when I was really little. She would have been way better than me for the part. She had a witch's cackle. You guys, I'm telling you, I'm in the business now, and I've heard a lot of witches' cackles, and I've still never heard one like my grandma's. And that is the truth. She could do the greatest cackle. And she would do it at Halloween. And she would, only hers was even better, way better. But I would impersonate her. Mm-hmm. I'm like, do it again, Grandma. Nana is what we call her. I said, do it again, Nana. And she would do it, and then I would do it. And I, so that's where that came from. And
It's funny, it reminds me of hearing stories from Mike Myers. We were just talking about Mike before the show started. Apparently, he's developing a new Austin Powers 4. And
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We just heard that news. And
right.
And I've heard him talk about a lot of the goofy characters he does and the voices. And he often will say, well, he'll attribute it to a family member that he would impersonate growing up. And you made me think of Mike Myers there with that.
Yeah, wow. Well, thank you. It was nice to be thought of in the same vein. He's incredible.
He's hilarious.
He's hilarious. Oh, I love him. Are you kidding?
Yeah, we were just saying we can't wait. If they're going to do an Austin Powers 4, we're going to get in line soon. We're going to get in line now.
Yeah, I know. But they have to.
So we played that audio of Salacious. Was that enhanced or pitched up or played around with? Because I know Ben Bird, he's a wizard in the studio.
Of course that was. I mean, that's, it's just slight. Remember, I was a lot younger. I was 23. That was in 83. So I'd been there with Lucasfilm for a couple of years when that happened. And so, I was higher. My voice did go higher then. And then Ben also, what they would call sweetened it, you'd take a lot off of the bottom end, off the bass. You add a little to the top. He probably pitched it slightly, and he had the ability to pitch things without speeding them up that other people didn't have because he had the computer stuff going at that already. And he was creating things before anybody could. There was a time when you could only pitch something up by speeding it up.
Right.
Yeah, so it'd be like the Chipmunks.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. So what they would do is which I've done voice, I did that thing for Disney, in fact, where I was the mice for every so many years, 20 years or something. Disney redoes their library of, they used to have this was Cinderella that I worked on. I was the mice,
right?
Because they played me the original mice from Cinderella. So they do first they did the records, right, and then when it goes to tapes, they did cassette tapes, and then I got in there and they were starting to do put it on CD. So when they do it, they re-record. They do a whole new version. I guess it keeps everybody working at the studio. Plus, they up the quality every time.
Right.
Because otherwise, I would say, well, why don't you go back and redo the original? Because that's what I grew up on. So I always liked the original better than what I could do. But the mice in that, so they would slow down. They'd record at half speed. So when they played me the guy that did the mice, and he says, "We love you, Cinderella. We love you, Cinderella." And so you do it like that, and then when they play it back at normal speed, it goes, "We love you, Cinderella," or even better. So,
without messing with the speed. So you record it initially slow,
yeah,
and then when they pitch it up, you still maintain a more a normal pace.
Yeah, because I'm even talking slower. So I would even go, "We love." First, they would play it for me, and then I would try to get in the same speed. "We love you, Cinderella," and they're recording slow. And then when they play it back at a normal speed, I'm talking normal, but my voice is pitched up.
Okay, right. Now, was the Salacious Crumb character?
Where'd that come from?
That was good stuff. I mean, but real good stuff. But I'm just curious. So was Salacious? Was that your first professional gig? I know you said so that was it. So you wow. So your debut was one of the biggest movies of all time.
Yeah.
That's not too shabby to start out.
Yeah. No, it's real nice. It's surreal. It's totally surreal.
Yeah. So now, you record the stuff there, and I'm going to guess, Mark, I don't know the way the production schedules were back then, but you probably did this some year or longer before the film came out. Did you kind of just forget about it?
I'm laughing there because no, I didn't forget about it at all, because I did that. Well, let me put it this way: I did that I can't remember, but it was about a month before the movie came out.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
No, I should say it was a month before we screened the movie in San Francisco, And then the movie came out like a week or two later, a couple weeks later that it came out. So, and Ben said, when they said, that's it, drop dead time, that's it, we're done. Whatever you got is the way it's going out. He was pissed. It said that he was not happy, I should say. And it was said that he said I could have used 6 more months.
Wow. On Jedi.
Yeah.
On Jedi.
Yeah.
That's what Ben said.
Well, he has
could
a lot
have
of creatures
used 6
in
more
Jedi.
months to put more into this. But, the sound people are always the last. That's the
thing.
Post.
Nobody respects the sound guy.
Well, because we're always up against, it's always at the very end, and they've already used all the damn money up front and pre-production and production, and all the stars take all the money, and then they come in, they're like, we're out of money and we're out of time. What can you guys do?
Yeah, tell it.
They did the same thing for the Force Awakens, right, Mark? Then they had you come in like 6 weeks before the movie came out.
Force Awakens, I did that 6 weeks before. That was the looping session. A whole bunch of us were there. Tom Kane and I don't want to start now because I'll forget people, but there was like 15 of us, and that was like a month before the movie. 6 weeks before the movie came out, right?
Wow.
Yeah, that was October. Oh, I know exactly. October 23rd. It's my wife's birthday, actually. It was October 23rd, and then the film came out December. So it was almost two months.
Was it an acceptable?
About 6 weeks. About 6 weeks.
Was it an acceptable excuse for the Lady Salacious, your lovely wife, Mrs. Dobson, to get blown off on her birthday so you could go be in Star Wars?
Actually, she was really happy for me.
Yes.
She really was.
Yes.
No, she really was. And of course, I felt like it was a special thing. I mean, when I got to the studio and I called her because I was there, and we had a little while before we were going to start, and I called her and said, happy birthday, I love you, and I can't believe I'm here on your birthday. To me, doing that, my career came full circle.
Yes.
How cool. Yeah.
And that was an awesome, very special thing for Matt Wood to invite me to be in that session, and it was overwhelming in a lot of ways.
Wow.
I had so many memories, so many things that I had forgotten that I was able to really just focus on that from the time I live in St. Louis. So from the time I got to the airport, really from once I got on the plane, I just all of a sudden went into a space and started remembering the early days of Lucasfilm and all of that and all the things and the session for the first time with Salacious and building the ranch and the parties and all that stuff was going through my mind. And then I got there a couple days before the session, and then by the time I got there, I was just an awesome time, man. I can't describe it. And then it was my wife's birthday at the same time, and it was just, it was beautiful.
Did she go with you? Did she go with you? No, you left her back in St. Louis.
Yeah, she didn't want to go.
No,
she'd have gone.
Hey, so you recorded at Skywalker Ranch?
I know. Where did we record?
In L.A.
Yeah, we recorded in a Fox, over at Fox.
Oh, no kidding. Wow, that's where that all happened.
That's where we did that.
Yeah.
Because it was a looping session. So Matt came down for that, and there was a lot of LA talent. So for them, it was like, what are they going to bring everybody up to Marin?
Right, exactly.
It's a lot, smarter to just go down to LA in a studio at Fox on a looping stage.
Yeah, they brought in a lot of talent from animation, like the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. And, and everyone's based in L.A., so obviously that makes the most sense.
Right.
But so cool that you were brought back. And also...
You know what? It's funny. I came in from St. Louis, Missouri, and Tom Kane came in from Kansas City, Missouri.
That's right.
Yeah. We're friends, and we're always like, isn't it kind of strange that they got these two Star Wars actors that live in Missouri? Missouri?
No, that's great. That's just, showing that the true talent does exist in the Midwest.
And, we're here.
Yeah, we're
Even though
here.
you fly over, we're down here.
So, and it's incredible. So that Salacious launched you into an actual career. So where can we hear you now?
Oh, man. God, I can only really usually remember what I've done that day, and then not usually. But you can hear me on man, you can hear me on Outdoor Channel, Sportsman Channel. I do all the Remington rifles and ammunition, and I just did. I'm looking at a script right here.
I love it. A lot of manly stuff.
Yeah, well, I hear the outdoor.
That voice you have. I mean, my
your
gosh.
voice.
Yeah,
you do have the quality of that voice quality that just takes you outdoors. You know,
it takes me to the outdoors.
Fresh air.
Yeah.
You know, waiting for a bite. As you're sitting there.
Exactly.
Mustaches.
Absolutely, lots of mustaches.
And Mark does a lot of stuff, especially for Halloween. But he does a lot of horror stuff, horror rides, horror exhibits, museums, and so forth.
Well, I read that Mark, that Paul Frees, who did the voice of the Haunted Mansion at Disney, was a big influence on you.
Legend.
I love. That's where I. So was what Kevin was just saying. Yes, I'm in the middle of doing. Let's see. Yesterday I did. I'm doing the haunted attractions all over the United States. I just did, like this week, I did New York City, and I can't remember the name of all the haunts. I do like 30 of them. But
so what's your specialty?
Chicago. I do Chicago, New York City, San Diego, L.A. I do Not Scary Farm, and so it's everything from, this Halloween season,
I'm already terrified.
Yeah, I am too. I am too.
Here, I've got a script right here. I've got them all over the place.
No, everyone, quiet on the set. Quiet on the set, because I'm going to take this, whatever you record, I'm going to take it and enhance it with all kind of crazy Halloween sounds and wolves howling in the background and stuff. Can you give us just a little bit of that script?
I'll give you a little bit.
All right.
Okay, let's see. This Halloween season, the legend returns. Can you handle it? There you go.
Okay, could you just, in the same voice, as long as we got you locked in, can you say Rebel Force Radio with Jason and Jimmy Mack?
Rebel Force Radio with Jason and Jimmy Mack.
No, that's the stuff.
I'm terrified.
That's the stuff.
I cannot wait till October now, so I can recycle this audio. But no, you haven't. I was watching something out here in the Chicago area, actually out in Aurora. There is a Raging Waves water park, and I keep seeing this commercial every morning on the WGN Morning News, where they talk about when the cobra strikes, the nation trembles. And I mean, do you recall? I know you do a lot of that stuff, but I mean,
that's great.
You sound just like that one.
Yeah, but that's great.
Yeah,
that's great, and that's the most fun. Like you were talking about Paul Frees. It's so Paul is the first time that I ever thought I might want to do voiceovers or voices. And as a kid, I was 10 years old. I went to Disneyland with my uncle, and he saved the Haunted Mansion for last at night, at night, and we went in. I'm 10 years old, and I'd been hearing that voice all day in Pirates of the Caribbean and missed great moments with Mr. Lincoln, and so we go through and I hear that when hinges creak in doorless chambers. And I was just like, oh, man. And, of course, when I went through the ride, I think I was listening more than looking. And when we got out, I said to the kid that was working, do you know who the voice is in there? And he said, yeah, that's Paul Frees. He's a lot of the voices here. And he said, and he's like Boris Badenoff and Bullwinkle. And I was like, yeah, okay, I hear it. Yeah. Oh, boy. Don't forget to write, But and so from then on, I started really, and at that time, you're talking 1970, and that was when Paul Frees was just really huge. He was all over everything. He was on TV commercials, and I just always loved Paul. And I thought, man, if I ever could do voices like that, that would be fun. That would be fun. And I always was a Halloween guy. So the Halloween thing is a big, and it's a big part of my studio. It looks like.
Well, you never know, Mark. There could be a 10-year-old kid listening to this or meeting you at a convention and saying, boy, if I could ever do that work and sound like, Mark Dodson, that would really be something. You never know how
that's so nice of you. I would tell him, well, go check out Paul Frees.
Now, I do have to ask you, there was another very famous, super iconic character of the 1980s that you almost had a hand in bringing to life. It didn't quite happen, but can you tell us about that one? Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I don't know. When was it? In the
80s, maybe Phoning Home?
Oh, my God.
You had a chance to do E.T.?
You know that?
I didn't know.
Okay, let's go there.
I've known Mark for 10 years, and I didn't even know that. You never told me that, you bastard.
Yeah, you bastard.
Damn.
We do our homework here at Rebel Force Radio.
You sure do. Yes. Oh, my God. Okay, now we're going to go all the way to the very, very, very beginning. Now we're going to go to the very, very, very beginning. Okay. So the first thing before we had even finished building. So now we got to go back to, what year was that, 82?
E.T., I think, did come out in 82.
E.T.?
Yeah.
It was 82. So in 82, I had already told Ben. I had already had one audition with Ben. Mm-hmm. And it was in San Anselmo. He had a studio in San Anselmo. We're talking up in Marin County.
Right.
And so he's in San Anselmo. Neat little hippie town. Really cool little place. And, yeah, so the first thing, okay, so here's why I don't tell it, because it becomes such a long story. So I just kind of jumped to right when it happened, right?
All right.
But okay, let's go to where the very first. Yeah, Kevin, you never heard this.
No, I didn't.
I don't think about it much, but thanks, you guys. Yeah.
Mark Dodson, wow, this is your life.
Yeah, no kidding. This is a trip. Okay. So Ben, let's go back even farther. How long is this show?
As long as you want it to go.
Oh, man.
That's right.
Just tell the damn story.
This is really weird.
Phone home.
I bought a phone home.
Ouch.
Elliot.
Well, here's the weird thing. So the first time that Ben asked me over, I go in, no script. I go in, and he says, I'm working on this creature. He's an alien. And we need a voice that's not male, not female. It's an alien. He just says a few words. She says a few words. So I'm just going to give you the lines and just see what you can come up with. Let's play around. I need something that doesn't sound male, doesn't sound female. Something in the middle that's unidentifiable, but it's an alien. So I'm like, okay. So he says, say Elliot. I don't remember what I did. I do remember one thing I did was kind of goofy. I did a frog. I was like, oh, let me go, Elliot. Something like that. I was like, what the hell is that? Like an underwater thing. And he says, and say, phone home. And I'm like, phone home or something. I don't know. I don't remember what I did, you guys. Point is, I didn't get the part, as you can tell. But here's the weird thing. So I didn't know what I was trying out for. And we all, ILM and they were, and Ben, and they were all working on E.T. with Spielberg. Mm-hmm. And Kathleen Kennedy, I think, was first when she was first up there. And the weird thing is, when we went to, and I knew they were working on a movie, but you didn't really pay attention. They were doing Poltergeist at that time. They were doing so much stuff was going on. And so we go to screen this movie, E.T., and I had gone home and told my wife, she's like, "What'd you do?" And I said, "I don't know. It's like some kind of an alien." And he had me saying some kid's name. I can't even remember the kid's name. And we're like, okay, so forget it. You didn't get it. So then we go to the screening, the cast and crew screening, and because I was part of Lucasfilm, and they used to let a lot of us come to those things, and even if you were working at the ranch. And this creature comes on the screen and says, Elliot. And I went, holy shit. And I look over, I go, that's the kid's name I was saying. He's like, you could have been E.T. I'm like, son of a bitch. That's how that one went.
Do we know who ended up doing the voice?
Yeah, actually,
Deborah Winger.
No. It was an actress named Pat Welsh.
Well, now, do we have the older lady that Ben heard asking for cigarettes at a store down there?
Yeah, that's her. She was a retired radio soap opera actress, and according to Wikipedia, as a chain smoker, she had a raspy voice that gave E.T. his trademark speech sound.
That's exactly right.
And a Star Wars connection and Return of the Jedi connection, according to Wikipedia, and this is something that I've known. She also has been hired by George Lucas to be the voice of Boushh, the bounty hunter, a.k.a. Princess Leia in disguise in the film Return of the Jedi.
Boushh and E.T. have the same voice actor?
Yes, that's the same voice. Pat
Wow,
Welsh.
I didn't know that.
Wow, I did not know that. I feel like I'm an idiot. Wow.
No, well, I think that's a good trivia question for you, Kev.
That's going to be a
that
trivia
one
question.
away.
That is a
the next time I do the contest, that's going to be a question. So anybody from Rebel Force Radio, you got a leg up again. Last time you got that one from The Last Jedi.
You certainly can hear it if you compare the two. I'm
thinking about it right now. Yeah,
you certainly hear it, right? The similarities in the voice are there.
E.T. phone home. Yate, yoto.
Oh yeah, I do now. But I was not aware of that. That's awesome.
So
wow.
as if auditioning for E.T. and bringing Salacious Crumb to life wasn't enough.
So, but
there was
yeah,
also
now that you mentioned my first audition was for the part of E.T. But now this is a good place to say, look, I got to be honest. My list of what I didn't get is way more impressive.
But I don't know about that. I mean, so your first audition is, for this little movie called E.T. The first big gig you get is for a little movie called Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And then, as if that was not enough, you start doing voices for, characters like the Gremlins, for example, and working with folks like Frank Welker, Howie Mandel, which I didn't realize till I did some of the research. I did not realize that Howie Mandel worked on the Gremlins, but that's apparently the case. So,
well, you know who he is.
Is he? Oh, he's Gizmo, right? I guess he would be Gizmo.
Yes.
Okay, now it's starting to make sense. It is Bob's World, yes.
Well, that totally takes me out of it now. I'm never going to be able to watch Gremlins again.
You guys didn't know Howie Mandel was Gizmo?
Nah.
This is not a Gremlins podcast, Kevin. This is. You said that with such judgment in your voice. But I just
thought it was common knowledge.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're just bored knowing that. But Mark, I mean, so here you are. What is that recording session like? You guys like Howie Mandel and Frank Welker. I mean, you don't get more of a legend. My God, the voice of Fred from Scooby Doo and umpteen other things. That must have been fun.
And Frank, it was so much fun. And then and I walk in and there's Frank Welker. I grew up on Frank Welker. Frank's a little older. He's older than me. I grew up on him. I grew up watching the original Scooby-Doo and all the stuff that Frank had done. So I walk in and it's like, wow, I can't believe I'm working it. He was so nice and so welcoming. And he went in, and I'll tell you what, it's been said, people that do impersonations say there's one of the hardest to do was Bob Hope.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a lot of your listeners. I don't know if a lot of them even know anymore Bob Hope, but
let me tell you something about Bob Hope. I got something to tell you. It's a wild ride. We're coming up. We got Brooke Shields joining us, Steve Lawrence, and Edie Gourmet, and Bruce Jenner. We got Bruce Jenner when he was still Bruce. Yeah. Ain't that something?
That's not bad. That's good.
That's wild. That's what.
That's wild.
It's brought to you by Texaco Oil.
Now, where's Jane Russell?
Oh, that's great. Oh, you're great. Well, he got Well, so Frank decided to be Bob Hope for about a half hour.
Oh man,
it was freaking hilarious.
I've been there. I've actually been there. I've been there. I've actually had long weekends where that's happened to me. Yeah.
Ain't that something?
That is hilarious.
I just heard it, and you were on it too. But Frank was really on it. He was dead on, and it was like, well, I'm working with. I think it came up because we were working on the Bing Crosby stage, and then the Bing Crosby thing led to Bob Hope, and next thing you know, Frank Welker was Bob Hope for like a half hour through the session. Everything he said, and it was just hilarious. And working with Joe Dante too. He's fun. He just has fun. It's a great fun time. Well, basically, that's a big part of it is when we get up and do our character, and I get up and do a gremlin or any of us, if we're quiet when we do it, and then when they play it back, or actually when it's like, okay, clear, we're done. If people start laughing, that's probably a take we're going to keep. So you kind of end up just trying in a movie, like working on a film like that. We're kind of entertaining each other. And if we get a reaction from each other, then the director reacts, then it's like, okay, we'll keep that take, because we do a lot of takes. Even if it's just a growl, we do several before we go, that's the one.
Right.
And it's usually one where everybody's like, now that was funny. That was cool.
Because sometimes that's the best way to gauge it. Did it make me laugh? Because laughter oftentimes is an involuntary act. If it's funny, you just start laughing at it. And when that happens, that's a real way to gauge quality. Did it make you laugh? So that helps you with those gut decisions.
It really does. Because then the next thing was that. And then, I was blessed. I've been lucky.
So in The Force Awakens, where can we hear you?
Maz Kanata's castle is the big place. When they first walk into the castle, Cretinus and Prashi, which is names that don't get mentioned, but they're sitting at a table playing a board game, and Cretinus wins the game. And when he does, he lets out a laugh, and he goes, because he won the game. And it was really, really, really heartwarming, actually, when we got to that scene. And so when you're in a looping session like that and all the actors were all there, we all try things. They're like, hey, who wants to try this? Oh, maybe 3 of us will get up and go, I'll try out. Okay, we'll each take a turn. And that's what we do. Well, that scene, and they show us the scene first and go, okay, here's who we need. See that guy right there? See that guy? Okay, what are we going to do with? And then we all, okay, I got something on somebody else. Well, we watched the scene with that, and Matt Wood looked over right after it played, and instead of saying, who wants to try this, he looked at me and said, Salacious. I need to laugh right here. That's exactly what he said, man. And that was the best feeling, and I was just like, oh, man, that was just awesome. Matt, thank you, Matt, if you ever hear this.
Oh, that's great.
I'll never forget that moment. I got chills, man, when he said, Salacious, I need your laugh. I was just like, whoa. Whoa.
Speaking of Matt Wood, we had that great time at that convention in Connecticut last month where Jimmy had the idea of General Grievous asking you a joke.
Oh, yeah.
That was
great.
That was a great idea, Jimmy, because that went over really well.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to listen to, and we did play back that highlight on the show a few weeks ago. So, a lot of fun. Thank you so much for picking up that ball and running with it. I didn't really think you would, but it was fun.
Oh, thanks.
It was.
That was great. Whose question was it?
It was I just suggested having the knowledge that,
or not question, but who suggested? Yeah, that was your. But it was brought out that that was a great idea. Yeah, so that was fun. Yeah. That was fun.
Yeah, General Grievous jokes. General Grievous jokes with Salacious Crumb riding in the sidecar, a la Ed McMahon to Johnny Carson.
Right.
Why don't cannibals eat clowns? Because they taste funny.
There we go. Yeah, Jimmy came up with the idea, and then I just wrote down 6 on. I just found 6 online, 6 corny jokes. I handed them to Matt Wood, and he circled 2. And that's what.
And you know what? He circled one that I love, which is why don't what is it?
Why don't cannibals eat clowns?
Eat clowns because they taste funny. I've always thought that was just a great joke. That's a great funny joke.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Matt's idea to do the second joke as the battle droid. And then you came up with the idea of doing the second one as a gremlin. You didn't do the second one as Salacious, if I remember correctly. It was fun. No, it was a good. No, Jimmy, that was a great idea. The audience got a kick out of it.
So did ours. So did ours. We got a lot of good feedback about that. And so speaking of conventions, you guys got something coming up pretty cool, right?
Yeah, I got a couple of them. We got one in Colorado in 2 weeks. Colorado Mark, I don't know if you want to talk about it. We got some Star Wars actors, and Mark will be there.
Colorado Springs, yeah, we'll be there doing the Comic-Con.
It's the weekend of the 21st.
24th.
21st. Is it the 24th? Okay,
it's August 24th.
Go with it. I don't care.
It's August 24th, 25th, and 26th, or else I'll be in the wrong place that weekend.
No, I'll be there. I'll be there with you, man. Don't worry about it. I'll make sure you get there. I got a lot of. I got Boston. I got fan expo in Boston this weekend, and then I got ICCC in Tennessee next month. I got so many. I'm like, I get them confused. I'm sorry.
Well,
so
I have Kingston, Tennessee, Comapalooza in October, Fayetteville. I'm doing a horror con, and I did Day of the Dead too, and then Minneapolis. I'm doing in October, so I'm doing 3 in October.
You should do Celebration. What a great idea that would be.
Yes.
I would love to do Celebration.
Come to Chicago.
Come to Chicago. Yes. I'm in St. Louis. I could be there, and I can drive there, and I'll be there in 4.5 hours. I'll be right there.
I'm in Chicago, so next time you come up here, we are going to hang.
Yes, we are.
You know what?
I love Chicago. I love Chicago.
Jason and Jimmy, can we ask your viewers to ask Lucasfilm to invite him? Mark would love to go, I'm sure.
That would be great.
I would love to.
Absolutely. Let's get Salacious at Celebration. Let's make it a Salacious celebration.
Yes.
In Chicago.
Yes.
Well, hey, in Chicago, I would say it could be a very salacious celebration.
With any luck, we'll have a good time. Well, we had a good time here. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time out, and you've got some great stories. I know we haven't heard them all, so if we get the chance to sit down with you in the spring in Chicago, how much fun that would be. A real treat for us.
That would be awesome. I would love that. Yeah.
And
we got to go hear some blues. Salacious loves the blues.
Yes. We'll go to the Kingston Mines. We'll go to Blues, etc. We'll go to all the good places.
Yeah.
Now you're talking. Before we go, can I just say one thing? Mark, Jason had a question for you about Salacious's middle name.
Oh, that's right. So, so it was always Salacious Crumb, and then over time it became Salacious B. Crumb.
Yeah.
And I just thought, have you ever heard? Was there a story as to what that B might stand for?
I don't know where they came up, why, but because I never heard the B until years later. It was just Salacious Crumb. I don't know when the B got added, but I'm told that the B, I think Tim Rose, the puppeteer, his, Salacious's life, he said that it stands for bread. Salacious bread crumb.
Well, Tim might know. He knows Salacious intimately.
He certainly does.
Stuck his hand up his, you know what?
Well, yeah, I know he does. I know. I warned him about that.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, you are a legend, Mark. Thank you so much for being on the program. We appreciate.
Man, thank you.
We'd love to catch up again. Yeah, it'd be fantastic. And Kevin, thank you for making the introduction here. And
anytime, guys, anytime.
We appreciate.
That was fun, Kevin. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Right. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for hanging with us.
Thanks to all the fans, all the Star Wars fans that keep us alive, and may the Force be with you.
And remember, #Salacious Celebration.
There you go.
There you go. There you go. Salacious celebration.
Let's make it happen.
I like it. I like it.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks. Take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Some creatures inhabit our dreams and nightmares. Some come to us directly from the movies like this character, Salacious Crumb. He is only one of over 60 weird and strange creatures to emerge out of the fantasies of the men and women who work here at the Star Wars Monster Workshop. In the movie, he plays Peter Lorre to Jabba the Hutt's Sidney Greenstreet. He sits at his blubbership's right hand and gives people like Carrie Fisher's Princess Leia a pretty bad time.